For 37 years, the official record said Elijah Vance was a mid-tier prospect who flamed out before his rookie season. But the scouting bureau that measured him made sure you'd never learn that his combine file was rewritten before it left the building. That's the story they tell. It isn't what happened. Someone made sure you'd never hear this. Here's what the records were rewritten to hide. In the spring of 1989, professional basketball scouts kept private grading sheets nobody outside the league ever saw. Elijah Vance was 19, from a small program in Ohio, unranked by any national service. He showed up to a regional combine almost by accident, filling a slot left open by a withdrawal. What happened in that gym over 90 minutes became the kind of story scouts told each other in hotel bars for decades. Never in print, never on record. Officially, Vance tested average. Unofficially, 3 separate scouts wrote something else entirely. The public combined sheet from that day lists Vance with a standing reach and a sprint time that place him solidly in the middle of the pack. That's the number that made it into every database since. But in 2019, a retired scout named Walter Osai donated his personal files to a university archive, and inside them was his original handwritten card from that day. The numbers don't match. Not by a small margin, by a margin that, if real, would have made Vance one of the best testing prospects the Bureau had measured in a decade. Osai's card was dated and initialed by 2 other scouts in the room. 3 men, the same day, the same gym, all writing down a version of Elijah Vance that the official record erased. The obvious question is why one file survived unedited while every institutional copy was altered to look ordinary. That question sat unanswered for years because nobody who could answer it was willing to. The easy explanation is a clerical error, a transposed number, a tired scorekeeper, a bad stopwatch. Bureaus have made worse mistakes on bigger stages. But a single error doesn't survive 3 independent witnesses writing the same higher figures on 3 separate cards. And clerical errors don't usually come with a written directive. Osai's donated file included a second document, an internal memo, unsigned, instructing regional offices to normalize outlier results pending further evaluation. It was dated 4 days after the combine. Nothing about it explains why Vance's file specifically needed normalizing when no other prospects did that spring. A mistake doesn't need a memo. A cover-up does. What the memo doesn't say is why Elijah Vance mattered enough to bury. The answer sits in a name barely anyone connects to that gym. Raymond Kell, an agent who represented 3 players already inside the league that same draft class, all clients of the same ownership group that funded the regional combine. Kell had a financial arrangement with 2 teams to steer talent towards specific rosters, an arrangement that wasn't illegal yet but would be within 2 years once the league rewrote its conflict of interest rules. An unranked player testing off the charts threatened that arrangement. He wasn't one of Kell's clients. He wasn't attached to anyone. A prospect that good, with no strings on him, draws attention from every team in the league. Attention Kell's arranged rosters couldn't survive. The Bureau's own oversight board later admitted, in a 1994 internal review never released publicly, that combined data had been adjusted for competitive balance on at least one occasion that spring. They never named the player. They didn't have to. 37 years is how long it took for one honest man's shoebox of index cards to say the name out loud. Elijah Vance never got drafted. He played 2 seasons overseas, then disappeared from competitive basketball entirely by 23. Nobody offered him a second look because on paper there was never a first one worth taking. He wasn't erased through violence or scandal. He was erased through arithmetic. A handful of numbers quietly moved closer to average, filed, and forgot. The teams that might have drafted him never knew what they passed on. The reporters covering that draft class never knew what they missed. And Kell's arrangement held for 2 more seasons before the rule changes finally caught up to it, by which point the damage to men like Vance was already permanent, unlisted, and unrecoverable. This is what a cover-up costs when it works. Not headlines, not scandal, just a life that quietly goes somewhere else while the record insists nothing unusual ever happened. Walter Osai died in 2021, 2 years after donating his files. Nobody from the Bureau ever contacted the archive to explain the discrepancy, correct it, or dispute it. The memo is still unsigned. The 2 other scouts who initialed Vance's real numbers were never publicly identified, and neither has come forward. Elijah Vance, now in his 50s, has never spoken about that spring on record. Maybe he doesn't know what his own card said. Maybe he does, and there's a reason he stayed quiet for 37 years. Somewhere there's a file listing exactly how many other prospects got normalized the same season, and nobody's found it yet.